You're lying in bed. It's quiet. The fight is technically over. He said goodnight. You said goodnight, but your brain didn't. It keeps replaying the sentence, the tone, the look on his face. I shouldn't have said that. That sentence, that exact sentence, it plays on repeat. Not because it was untrue, not even because it was cruel, but because now you're wondering something much worse. Did that sentence change how he sees you? Did that moment cost you something? Because the moment a conflict ends, something strange happens inside your mind. You stop arguing with him, and you start arguing with yourself. Maybe you were too sharp, too emotional, too much. And now your brain is trying to calculate the damage. But here's the part that most people don't understand about regret in relationships. You're not actually trying to fix what you said. You're trying to protect the bond. Because when something feels like it might destabilize the connection, your nervous system panics. So it rewinds the moment over and over. And that's why regret in relationships hurts so much more than regret anywhere else. You don't just regret the sentence. You regret the possibility that it changed how you're seen. Your brain is wired with something called negativity bias. It scans for threat. It prioritizes what could go wrong. You can have 20 calm moments in a week, but your mind will lock onto the one where his tone shifted, the moment where you felt dismissed, the moment where you reacted. Because your nervous system doesn't care about neutral, it cares about risk. But here's where it gets deeper in relationships. Regret isn't just about mistakes, it's about identity. You start asking, why am I like this? Why do I always overreact? Why can't I just stay calm? And now the issue isn't the argument, it's you. You're not just reviewing your words, you're reviewing your worth. That's where regret turns into shame. There's a difference. Regret says, I wish I handled that differently. Shame says, there's something wrong with me. Regret can teach you. Shame makes you shrink. And when you shrink in a relationship, you don't become safer. You become smaller. Let's be honest about something uncomfortable. Sometimes you don't regret the content of what you said. You regret that you showed how much you cared. You regret that you revealed your insecurity. You regret that you needed reassurance. Not because it was wrong, but because you're afraid it made you look weak. So you start rewriting yourself. I shouldn't have brought that up. I should have waited. I should have been cooler. I shouldn't have sent that text. But here's the truth you don't want to hear. You made the best decision you could with the emotional regulation you had in that moment. You weren't operating from some omniscient, perfectly calm, fully self-aware future version of yourself. You were operating from the nervous system state you were in. If you were triggered, you responded from that trigger. If you felt unheard, you pushed harder. That doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. The illusion is this: if you had just said it perfectly, everything would be fine. If you had been softer, smarter, more strategic, more detached, the relationship would be smoother. But relationships don't fail because of one imperfect sentence. They fracture when people are chronically unheard or chronically unregulated. One moment doesn't define the bond. Patterns do. And here's the dangerous part of constant regret. You start self-editing before you even speak. You filter your needs, you minimize your reactions. You think you're becoming mature, but you're actually abandoning parts of yourself to avoid discomfort. If you constantly regret being honest, eventually you stop being honest. Now let's separate something critical. There is healthy regret. If you insulted him, if you lashed out, if you were unfair, that's data. That's growth material. You can apologize. You can repair. That's strength. But if your regret is about having a need, setting a boundary, or reacting to being hurt, that's not necessarily a mistake. That might be clarity. Ask yourself this: did I violate my values, or did I finally express them? Those are not the same thing. Another uncomfortable layer: sometimes you regret staying silent longer than you regret speaking up. You look back and think, I should have said something months ago. I shouldn't have let that slide. Regret isn't always about excess. Sometimes it's about delay. And that's important because your nervous system doesn't just react to conflict. It reacts to suppression. You can regret being too loud. You can regret being too quiet. The common denominator isn't the action. It's the fear of losing connection. Here's what actually fuels chronic regret in relationships: control. Not controlling him. Controlling perception. You want to manage how you're seen. You want to avoid being misunderstood. You want to eliminate the risk of rejection. So your brain scans for any moment that might have lowered your value in his eyes. And when it finds one, it replays it like evidence in a trial. But love isn't built on flawless performance. It's built on resilience after imperfection. Real connection survives imperfection. Fragile relationships require perfection. If one imperfect moment destabilizes everything, the foundation was fragile to begin with. Let's talk about the 3 a.m. spiral. You remember the argument. You analyze your tone. You imagine alternative responses. You script the better version, and your body reacts as if you're back in it. Heart racing, chest tight. That's not wisdom. That's your nervous system trying to time travel, trying to prevent future pain by dissecting past behavior. But the past is unchangeable. The only leverage point you have is your next response. So what do you do with regret instead of letting it consume you? First, turn it into data, not identity. Instead of, I'm too emotional, say, I was dysregulated. Instead of, I ruin everything, say, that approach didn't work. Data creates options. Identity creates shame. Second, differentiate between anxiety and intuition. Anxiety screams immediately. Fix it now. Text him. Apologize again. Clarify. Intuition is quieter. It remains even after you calm down. If after you regulate yourself, you still believe you crossed a line, apologize. That's strength. If after you regulate yourself, you still believe your need was valid, stand by it. That's growth. Third, stop assuming every uncomfortable reaction means you failed. Sometimes tension is the cost of authenticity. If you never create friction, you're probably not fully present. Mature love can handle repair. Immature love requires perfection. And here's the shift that changes everything. Regret is not proof you're wrong. It's proof you care. The problem isn't caring. The problem is believing that caring must always look composed. If you always regret your actions, ask yourself this: am I actually learning? Or am I punishing myself? Because those are different processes. Learning moves forward. Punishment loops backward. You don't need to be the calmest person in every disagreement. You need to be someone who can repair, reflect, and return to center. That's emotional maturity, not silence, not suppression, not pretending nothing bothered you. You will say imperfect things. You will react emotionally sometimes. You will misread tone. You will overthink. That's part of attachment. The goal is to build enough stability that one reaction doesn't threaten your entire sense of safety. Because healthy relationships don't make you feel like every misstep could cost you everything. So next time you hear yourself think, I shouldn't have said that, pause. Before you replay the entire argument again, before you start rewriting the moment in your head, ask yourself something different. Was I cruel, or was I honest? Was I reactive, or was I hurt? Do I need to repair, or do I need to regulate? Regret is information, not identity. You don't grow by rewriting the past. You grow by responding differently the next time the same trigger appears. So next time you're lying in bed, replaying that sentence, asking yourself if you ruined everything, remember this: if you are constantly trying to become easier to love, you will eventually disappear. Love that requires self-erasure isn't stability. It's survival mode. So the next time you hear yourself think, I shouldn't have said that, ask this: am I regretting a mistake, or am I punishing myself for being human? One requires repair. The other requires you to stop.